Welcome, everyone. We are here for week 3, FanDuel Cafe Value with our buddy Jason. How's it going, Jason?
It's going good. It's going good.
Are you feeling good, Jason? How are you feeling?
I feel great.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Good. Good. That's what we like to hear. Um, Now we're going to get into quarterbacks in a little bit, but I just wanted to take a second out to say thank you for listening. It really means a lot to us. Okay, I'm going to stop doing that now. But quarterback, uh, what did you get here? What did you like? What did you potentially not like from the top three in cafe value here?
Well, I wasn't surprised to see Brian Hoyer come up just because one, he's 6K, projected for 14 points on FanDuel. On the road at Dallas, the situation could be better. Could also be worse. We had some glory days with Brian Hoyer last year. I mean, you had some chances to stack him with Hopkins and came through on some GPP wins. This time, I don't know. I don't feel the need to dive down to a 6K quarterback. I've already done that once this year. Hasn't worked out. Obviously, this is a different situation. I think it's an upgrade in terms of Miller and Jeffrey, in terms of what they're going to be getting at the quarterback position. We know Hoyer can get them the ball. If you're building multiple lineups and want to fit in a bunch of pieces and want to fit in and be different, I'm not against it. I probably won't have any Hoyer shares, but as a 6K quarterback with his type of upside that we know is actually there, sure.
So this is going to be a hot take. But just based on what I watched last game, so Cutler was completely ignoring Kevin White. In week 1, he threw an interception because Kevin White ran the wrong route, and he literally didn't look at him the rest of the game. But Kevin White was getting open last week, and when Brian Hoyer came in, he was looking for him. While he was obviously looking for Alshon Jeffrey as well, he was looking directly at Zach Miller and Kevin White quite a bit. So I think that's something interesting to look at. If you're going super duper contrarian, I think you might want to look at those. But as Brian Hoyer as a play itself, I prefer guys here.
Yeah, I do too. And I like the next guy here. I mean, obviously 1,400 seems like a big bump, but 7,400 for Ryan Tannehill isn't a bad price whatsoever. I mean, gets a Browns secondary that might be without Joe Hayden. He didn't practice yesterday. That's obviously a big bump because he's been one of the more efficient corners through 2 games this year. Outside of that, though, I love Tannehill's stacking options. I like Devontae Parker. I like Jarvis Landry. You can even toss in a Kenny Stills in a deep GPP if you want. But overall, I think Tannehill has some upside here. Obviously, a 26 team total. You got to like that. They're at home. Tannehill in cash? No, I can't. I still can't do it. I can't trust that.
Oh,
I like the value, but I'm sorry, I can't do it. I think it might be a popular play. I think it's grown as the week goes on, but it was just with the value at running back this week. I don't think that's going to be how my cash games are constructed. I still rather take a more stable QB, but I love Tannehill in GPPs, even though he is going to be chalky. I just like the upside for that price.
so in the one cash game lineup I've built so far on FanDuel, I ended up with Derek Carr. I couldn't get the pay up I wanted, which is Andrew Luck, who's next on this list. I think Tannehill's in play. Like you mentioned, kind of like you said, he's in play. It's still Ryan Tannehill, but this matchup's fairly juicy. So yeah, I'm with you. What do you think about Luck?
I like Luck. I mean, obviously here he's the third highest cafe value in terms of an over/under team total. Our game theory is at a 9 for him, which you like. 8,700. Obviously, it's pricey, but it seems that he's going to be able to pay off that price. I mean, you look at this San Diego secondary. I like the names. I like the guys there. I think game flow kind of hurts them in terms of fantasy scoring still. I mean, they've allowed the second most fantasy points per game to quarterbacks this season. You know, Luck's going to throw 35 plus times. They can't run the ball. You got to anticipate them trying to probably keep up with each other. I know you and I were discussing a little bit earlier about how we think this game's going to go. Luck, I think, out of the pay up options is the best play. In terms of making him a must, probably not. I do like Derek Carr. I think is a decent option. I think Rodgers is going to bounce back this week as well. Overall, though, I think Luck's a pretty safe bet in terms of a floor, and obviously that ceiling we always know is there too.
Yeah, at the beginning of this week, I had him down in bold with exclamation points and at the end of it. And that's why you should definitely let your process evolve throughout the week. I don't know. I still love him. I still think he's a cash option, but I'm certainly not gonna be like, you're not playing luck, at this stage. I think
Yeah.
I can understand, there's definitely reasons why you could definitely fade him.
Yeah, you definitely could.
Um in terms of running back, D'Angelo, much tougher to fade on DK. What are you looking at here? Is he fadeable for you here or nah?
Yes and no. He's fadeable, but I'm also looking and thinking 8,800 with guys like Christine Michael, guys like, Frank Gore who pops up, guys like Charles Sims. Putting that as an RB2 with Williams, it isn't as bad as people think. I think that evens out kind of his high price tag. Obviously, 8,800, it took him to his final week of being a starter for them to rise it up. But obviously, we know what he's going to get in terms of touches. I'm still not sold on this Philly defense. I know they've looked good, but obviously, anyone is going to look good against a Jay Cutler led Bears team, and same thing with the Browns. So this is really their first test. I think you're going to just take advantage of the workload here. Is he a must play? No, but I think it's a really tough fade. I think in GPPs you can go different directions, certainly at 8,800, but cash games, I still think he's going to be a guy slide in.
Yeah, it's just so easy to put him in and be like, oh, I'm getting 30 carries. Okay, done. And maybe like 40. This is the last game they're going to get to really use him. And then Le'Veon comes back. So who knows? Maybe they'll just run it every single time and he'll get 60 touches because it's just egregious how they're using him. But, for DFS, hey, that's cool. So two more guys I like here. I love Melvin Gordon this week, 7,100. And so first, I think we should talk about Frank Gore. Price tag's unreal. And I know you don't like nobody likes Frank Gore, but what do you think of this?
5,700, I think the price makes him a somewhat viable option. You look at the San Diego defense. For one, I'm looking inside the red zone here, and I think I'm going to be taking a lot of the red zone targets that if I am going after this game, which I will be. But I mean, Dwayne Allen, Jack Doyle, Frank Gore, I think those are going to be the guys that get targeted the most inside the red zone. Hilton, Dorsett are not red zone threats. I look at this. I think Gore is obviously going to get 15 carries. Has 7 catches in 2 games, which is encouraging. He can get a couple dump offs and maybe get a big play or two. Um, Overall, it just kind of depends where you're going. I mean, if you're using Brown, if you're using Williams, I think Gore is a viable option. If you're kind of going to that next tier, I don't see the real need for him. I think you can go up to a Gordon. I think you can use a Sims, who's a couple hundred more. Michael as well. I don't know how much Gore I'm going to have. I know he's cheap, but it's just going to be if he opens up to an extreme play that I like a lot. Otherwise, I'll probably be fading for the most part.
I will say on FanDuel, I think this week's kind of ugly. This is gonna be really tough to nail down in cash which running backs. There's a lot of values in mediocre spots, and there's a lot of like mediocre players in good spots. So it's like it's gonna be tough. If you're playing tournaments, I'd really suggest hedging instead of going 100% anyone. But yeah, I definitely agree there. Um, as far as is Gordon a cash game play for you here?
He's not. I think
He's
I
not.
might I
Okay.
might differ a little bit from. I think people are pretty split on him this week. In
hmm
terms of cash games, I still think people are kind of ignoring the floor that he has. And obviously, it's a completely different situation without Woodhead. It's still a situation though that I'm not quite comfortable logging him in cash. I still rather kind of go down to games that I feel like are going to actually fit him a little bit better. GPPs, I still think he's going to have ownership. I still think he's worthy. I think if he fits in your cash game lineups, I'm not against it. It's just kind of a personal choice for me because I don't quite think the game flow is going to really own up to Gordon getting the type of workload that he got last week and really overall the type of production that he had this week. I think it's just going to be a little bit different. And I think it's a great way to actually hedge against him because I do think he's getting kind of a buzz, both negative and positively this week, but I still think the ownership is going to be there.
Ownership definitely going to be there. And that's fair. That's what we were discussing actually when we talked about the Chargers and Colts game, There's certainly things that could go against him. And that's something I kind of ignored for most of the week. I'm still in on him as a cash game guy, but or like uh Dexter McCluster somehow, some way just being that gnat that just steals a bunch of touches and receptions in the receiving game. And if they get down early, it could definitely happen. So he's certainly got a low floor. I can't disagree with that. Anyhow, wide receiver Antonio Brown back in the good graces. Are we back in on him this week, even at 9,500, or is this another week where maybe you're taking off from him?
No, I think this is a week I'm going to be locking and loading a lot of Brown. One, you don't have Julio Jones on the main slate. That makes it pretty easy. Odell Beckham going up in a tough matchup against Josh Norman. I think that makes it pretty easy to go Brown if you're paying up. I love a lot of receivers this week. I think secondary options are great. I love Allen Robinson, who we'll talk about here in a minute. And I think as we came off of kind of the value at the running back spot, I think Brown is probably going to be the first guy to win my cash games. I just think it's a pretty unfair matchup against, the secondary here for Philly. Obviously, we talked about them, with D'Angelo Williams. Are they what we actually see? Are they that good? Or has it just kind of been what they play as far as matchups go? I just don't think they really have an answer for Brown. And we know he's going to get 10 plus targets and know he's just going to be a big part of this offense. So, it's so focused on a couple of guys. I just don't think it makes sense fading him in cash games.
I will pose this question. Antonio Brown at his price or Amari Cooper at his price?
Can I say both? Because both is possible.
There you go. Then we're all good, folks. Let's do that. I would try to get as much Cooper as you can, and I'm in on Antonio Brown. Even in tournaments, I think this is going to be one of the lowest owned, in terms of ownership. He's going to be all season. So I like that call. Stephon Diggs, I mean, we talked about Frank Gore's price a little bit. This is something else.
It's a bit absurd that he didn't. I know. I think FanDuel's trying to go with, it's a tough matchup against this Carolina defense, but overall the secondary hasn't really shown me anything that is keeping me off of Diggs. I mean, Diggs is the leading target getter there in Minnesota as expected. Bradford looked well. I know you and I both kind of share the same opinion. We're not looking at Minnesota outside of Diggs. We don't think anyone's going to do anything outside of Diggs. And I just think you look here at 6,400, he fits into almost every lineup perfectly because that price is so low. We know his targets are going to be there. Pretty good matchup, in my opinion. I did the wide receiver cornerback matchup grade, and he was in the plus for me. I just don't see a reason fading him in cash games. I just think because, one, if he goes off and you don't have him at that ownership that he's going to be, ugh.
In the cartoons, like Charlie Brown, when they show like a confused emotion, they have those lines above the people's heads.
Yeah.
That's how I feel Sam Bradford. He's gonna have those like in midway through the first quarter this week. I think he's just gonna be huddled in the fetal position by the end of this game. But I think Diggs is good enough. Like, I mean, I don't want to overreact to 2 weeks of this season, but if you go back and watch 2015 as well, I mean, I kind of miss this. Yeah, this guy's an emerging star. And I just don't think there's much debate right now. He's just not coverable. And at 6,400, I don't care about the matchup.
I think if he was 7,400, we'd be having a different conversation about it. But
Yeah.
I do think at 6,400, it really is a tough fade. And I'm just, I think the low total there is part of it. But you know what? 6 catches for 80 yards is probably about his floor at this point, just because he's that true number one option.
And what I mean by that is it's kind of like sometimes guys can have fluky production early on and like 180 yards is not going to continue, but this is no fluke. I mean, if you're watching these plays, he's just incredible. So, yeah. Anyway, let's talk about another incredible receiver, Allen Robinson. What do you think that about that at 7,900?
I love him a lot this week. I mean, 7,900. Obviously, it's a different price tier. It sits in between Brown and Diggs. I like him a lot. I think this game. We talked about it on your podcast as far as maybe we're looking at this game all wrong in terms of how much actual passing production could come out of this, and there actually could be a ton.
Mhm.
A-Rob, I mean, had 15 targets in the first game, had 5 in the second. He's had 2 incredibly tough matchups as far as corners go. Had Verrett, had Shields in the first 2 matchups. Now he's going to get Smith for Baltimore, who I'm not afraid of. I'm expecting a bounce back game for Robinson. I just think, regardless of game flow, it doesn't matter with him because you know what? If the Jags are up, it's likely going to be coming from Robinson. If the Jags are down, we know that garbage time Bortles is always going to be there. I like him quite a bit. Baltimore so far, per Football Outsiders, 28th against wide receiver ones this year. Um, the price is nice. I just think 7,900 is certainly reasonable. If you want to pay down elsewhere, Cooper, Brown, Robinson might be in a pretty intriguing wide receiver threesome there on FanDuel.
No kidding. And again, paying up at receivers kind of hit people in the stomach the last few weeks. So I think this is a nice way to you're getting much lower ownership because of the last 2 weeks,
Yeah, you definitely are.
So I think that's very interesting. And I mean, hey, if you want to throw Brown, Diggs, and Robinson in a group as well, like go. That's totally cool with me. I like that a lot. And so one of my favorite contrarian tight ends of the week is Travis Kelce, and he popped up here as the number one guy. Are you on that train as well?
I'm actually not. I mean,
Oh.
contrarian, he's certainly going to be that way, especially with Dwayne Allen at a similar price.
Mhm.
Delaney Walker, who I like this week, but he may not even play this week. So overall, decent game against San Diego in his first one. Obviously, a tougher matchup in his second against Houston. Um, Looking at this one though, I don't know what to really take from Kelce. I mean, in terms of cash games, I'm probably not going to be playing him. As far as GPP upside, though, I'm not quite sure he has enough for me. I just think Dwayne Allen might be the guy I just kind of continue to rely on, or go up to a Walker or go up to a Reed, who I just think has a much higher ceiling. I like Kelce a lot. I think he's a great tight end. 6K is a reasonable price tag for him. I think this game is a good GPP game to target in terms of guys like Forte. I don't mind Macklin is even a guy I might take a look at in terms of GPPs, but
Mm.
Kelce, I'm just kind of off on. I just feel like I'm limiting myself. I'm stopping myself at about 2 guys there.
I guess so. With your thoughts on this currently, what do you think his ownership would be in a tournament?
Oh, less than 5%.
Okay. So that's kind of where I'm at. And I think you're just banking on, all right, well, is Travis Kelce going to get that 40-yard touchdown or not? That's kind of how it goes for Travis Kelce. And he's going to have, 4 or 5 of those games a year. And then the other are going to be 5 for 55 and no touchdowns. So I think this is an interesting matchup for him. Obviously, Alex Smith has been heavily targeting Macklin. I think both are good plays. So, yeah, I think that's interesting. If Delaney Walker wasn't questionable, I'd be moving a lot of my exposure to him. But just with the way things match up, I think he's in play. Dennis Pitt at 5K. What do you think of that?
Hard not to like him. I mean, 12 targets in week 2. Going to draw a friendly matchup here against Jacksonville, who struggled with tight ends last year. They rank in the bottom half against tight ends per Football Outsiders this week. Hard not to just lock Pitt into your cash games. I mean, 5K is certainly reasonable. He's one of the reasons why I don't like Jesse James for 500 less, because I just feel like Pitt is in a better spot in terms of being in an offense that focuses around him a little bit more. We saw that last week. A little bit better matchup. Um, I don't know. I mean, I think cash games, it's hard to really just go anywhere else. I mean, I obviously I liked Walker, but that things have changed in terms of him actually being healthy. So Pitt is the guy, as you always say, plug Pitt in at tight end and just log out. I think that's how it is in cash. GPPs, you can go other
Yeah.
directions.
I'm totally with you, especially with the Jesse James logic. Uh, what's Jesse James' upside? Like, I just look at Heath Miller's role back in the day. Like, absolute ceiling is like 14 points,
Mhm.
And if Pitta gets into the end zone, I mean, this dude could be the Gary Barnidge of this year. So I certainly like his target share last week, and yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it. So defenses, we discussed this on DK. I love this group for you. Bengals, Dolphins, Broncos. First, I guess let's talk about the Dolphins. What do you see with that? Are you in on them in all formats? Are you fading them because they're going to be the chalk, or is it just a situation where you plug them in anyway?
Chalk regardless. I think I'm playing them a ton this week. Hard not to against that Cleveland offense that's without Corey Coleman on their third string quarterback. Dolphins for me have crept into that cash game territory. I think as in terms of a value, I like them quite a bit. FanDuel does make it a little bit tougher because the Broncos obviously are 200 more than them. We usually don't see that, but obviously I still think the Dolphins are a better play and a better matchup at home. I just don't see any real weapons. I see AJ Green could be potentially trouble. Bernard obviously could get out of the backfield. I like all three here. I think the Dolphins are kind of the clear-cut cash out of this grouping. Broncos obviously are cash king guys every week. Bengals, though, I know you and I, we were talking on your pod. You kind of changed my mind a little bit on them. I think there's a lot of low ownership that could possibly be here at 4,500, 100 less than the Dolphins, 300 less than Denver. You're not going to get them high. And I think there is a lot of turnover prone or turnover opportunistic guys on that defense, especially in that secondary. As you mentioned, if that pick six comes, that could be a tournament winner in terms of kind of getting exposure to your defenses.
Yeah. And I mean, again, I wasn't on this before the cafe value kind of threw it in, but I mean, when you look at 4-for-4's projections, they're kind of on the Bengals this week. The price is good, and they're priced like this Denver defense is, the 2014 Peyton Manning, or even the end of 2014 when Peyton was sort of falling off. But Demaryius Thomas has a hip issue. It's not just going to go away because he's playing. Emmanuel Sanders is a really good receiver, but I just have no confidence in Trevor Siemian. And I think with 2 weeks of film, that's a high upside play. And I love it. Obviously, Dolphins are a great play, but I don't think anyone's on the Bengals. And I think I love it. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, let's not mention, Simeon's going on the road for his first time in
Yeah.
Cincinnati. That's a tough spot. This defense, we know the upside that they have. So I think overall, both those defenses are phenomenal plays. Dolphins are as well. But yeah, Bengals certainly going to be that low-owned moneymaker possibility this week.
3%, honestly, right?
If.
Something like that, 3 to 5. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's super low. They've done so well against the run that while I'm worried about CJ Anderson, it's kind of like they held D'Angelo Williams to 2.7 yards per carry last week. So I don't know. I don't know. Interesting to think about it at the very least.
Yep.
So anyhow, hopefully this helps you out, or at least piqued some interest for you. If you want to check out the rest of the cafe values, go to our site and check out the tools, the lineup optimizer. It's really great stuff. If you're enjoying what we're doing here, definitely check out the YouTube channel. If you like this video, give us a like and subscribe. So anyhow, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you guys in week 4.